We're going to be playing Warlock II: The Exiled. Warlock 2 is a it's a labor of love game. It's absolutely fantastic. I really like it. I know that there are some people that have some issues with how like enemies spawn and that kind of thing, but I've always really loved this series. I love the Majesty series. If you ever played Majesty, the Fantasy Kingdom sim, it's sort of the world of Ardania is sort of like a video game universe that they had that first game. Then they had Majesty 2, I think, was next, and then they had Warlock Master of the Arcane, which is a 4X strategy game similar to, say, Civ, where you've got a hex-based system, you build units and upgrade your cities, but with fantasy elements, so you've got zombies and monsters and magic and stuff like that. And then they came out with Warlock 2, The Exiled, which is building on the story from when Warlock 1 ended, which basically ended with the world being shattered into shards. So, you know, on usually on a fantasy world, it's much like the real world, is that there's different biomes and different groups of people. But at the end of Warlock 1, when the world was shattered, it split into these shards that sort of encompass sort of general themes about the world. So there's actually like an autumn world and a dead world and a vibrant world and a lava world, and the people that lived on those worlds were also shattered into the different shards, and some factions were kind of changed, some factions were created anew that were kind of conglomerates of different other peoples. And so when you play this game, you've actually got a number of different ways you can set it up. You can set it up in just sort of a regular big map like any other Civ type strategy game, where you can just have, say, just a big world, everybody spawns on it, you fight over that. But you can also do like an Outplanes mode, where you actually start on these different shards and you're usually alone on those, and then there's all these little shards that are connected via like pathways, and so you travel to and fro in these portals, and it sort of makes all of these really cool natural choke points. It changes how you play, because when you spawn in, you'll be in, say, let's say you're in a vibrant world where you get lots of extra food, but you may not really get a lot of extra money or anything else. And it changes how you play, and you go through the portal. The next place you find is very different. Say it's a dead world, and now suddenly you can make lots of mana there, but you can't get any food. So you have to sort of play around the shards. And then once you get into the next one, the other players will start spawning in through their portals and trying to come for you. Now, you're probably wondering what all this stuff is on the side here. This is because I have a number of mods installed. Many of them are just player colors, so that I can choose more interesting sort of banners for my faction that I'm going to make. And then one of them adds water terraforming spells, because the terraforming in this game is quite fun, but it was lacking some ability to terraform some water stuff. And then there's the biggest one's called the Renaissance mod, and this mod basically makes the game into Warlock 3. To be honest, it added several factions to the game, completely new factions. It modified AI, resources, spells. It modified a whole lot of stuff. It's about as much change as Warlock 1 to 2. This mod changes that much from 2 to make it almost like Warlock 3. So in this episode, we'll go ahead and get started with making a faction, and I think what I want to do is Battle for the Outplanes mode. So this is a game mode in which you compete for AI or other players for dominance over the Outworld shards, except Ardania, which is like the home world. The Exiled mode is the campaign. The Sandbox mode is what I was talking about, where you're just sort of on a big map like you'd play in Civ 5 or something. And then this is another campaign, but I don't want to do that. I want to do kind of like a skirmish. Now, I am going to turn the difficulty down to normal. And normally in Warlock 2 I would have played on Impossible, but the AI changes with the Renaissance mod that I'm using. Makes the AI, in order to make up for how dumb AI is, they really get a lot of extra units. They just get units out like crazy. So I'll just be getting into my tier 2 units, and they'll be sending like tier 3s, tier 4s, like just very powerful units that can one-shot my troops. They'll be sending those through regularly, and it became frustrating to the point of not being fun, so I've had to turn it down to challenging, which was very challenging, very, very challenging. Impossible was actually impossible with this mod, depending on your setup. So I'm going to go ahead and go with normal for this one, so I can actually get some stuff accomplished. There'll still be plenty of challenging things, because some of the monsters that spawn in this game are absolutely disgustingly strong. So I am looking forward to that. So what we want to do is we want to leave on the victory types. So we've got defeating the great mages, so that's basically dominance, destroy everybody else. Defeat an avatar. So in this world there are these, I think there's 8 gods, and they're all like diametrically opposed. Basically they're around a wheel, kind of like this. And so whenever you get closer to one god, another god gets upset with you. And as you get closer and closer to one, and you get their boons basically through the research tree, you're upsetting a god enough that eventually they will send an avatar of themselves into the world to destroy you. So if you can defeat the avatar of a god, you win the game. Sort of self-explanatory. If you're capable of doing that, you win. The Unity spell, I'm going to turn that off. That's if you get to the end of the research tree and there's nothing left to research. You can just research, win the game, basically. And it's a little bit anticlimactic, so we'll turn that off. And Capture the Holy Grounds is there are very special resource nodes that typically only appear on the most hostile of the shards, or at least in the corners of the world, depending on what mode you're on. And when you capture these, you can put special buildings on them, and depending on your faction, you can build special units. So if like you're the humans, you can build, say, a temple to Doros, which is one of the gods, and then you can build like these big, powerful, tanky paladin creatures out of it. But if you're another faction, you might build a completely different unit when you have a temple to Doros, and not every faction can worship that god. So some factions can only worship 2 or 3 of the 8 gods. Some factions can worship like 6 or 7 of them, and that's sort of the strengths and weaknesses of some of the factions. If they're outright strong, they may actually not be able to worship as many gods, and they have fewer options. So capturing the holy grounds is once you've acquired, I think it's 50% of the holy grounds in all of the universe, basically, you win the game, because you're tapping into so much like the power of the divine gods that you can just win there. So we'll hit monster spawn rate on normal difficulty, battle for outplanes, and I'm turned off the Unity spell. All right, next. So universe size, I think we're gonna go huge. This is gonna give us a million shards. Maybe I want to go large. Let's go large. And we'll do 3 rival great mages. So that should be good. That gives, I don't know how many shards that gives per player. I know everybody spawns on 1, so there'll be 4, and then there's usually 1 for each person between them, so that's 2 more, and then there'll be a handful of really powerful ones out on the outskirts, and then there should be what's essentially a mirror version of Ardania somewhere, which is a really interesting one to explore. So you can go through and you can some of these were in the game already, like they came with the game and they're all set up that way, but some of them came in through the mod, like some of these back here. I think some of these are modded in. Yeah, some of these are modded in. So if we go to customize, I can take any portrait I want and I can make a faction out of them. So I think with this, well, that's kind of cool. I think what I want to do is play with the, well, I guess I could go over the factions really quickly. The Arethi Elves are actually a DLC in the first game, and they're very powerful. Their units are 1v1, they're better than almost every other faction's units, but they have a higher upkeep. They tend to be fast. Their units have a lot of movement points. This faction feels really good to play. They feel strong. Their weaknesses are there, but I don't feel like you feel them. The humans, very self-explanatory. They have access to 7 of the 8 gods. They make a lot of gold. They can get tough warriors, rangers, they can get mages, they can actually get catapults, which have a 3 range attack, which is very, very rare. So they're pretty all-rounded. Monsters are really fun. They've got really good melee troops. They can get trolls that can regenerate, and they're really fun to play, and they have a lot of hilarious voice lines, and they're good at producing food. The Naga is I think it was a DLC in this game, in Warlock 2, and they can settle in the water, and they're the only faction that can do that. And so they can get access to a lot of really cool stuff there, and they've got a lot of units that are amphibious, so they can be both on the land and in the water, and that gives them sort of a hard start, because there are a lot of times there's sea monsters in the water, but later, like, you can initiate fights against an enemy player's city, surprise them from the water, that they weren't expecting. So they're hard to play, but they are quite interesting, and you can see that they worship no gods, so they have no divine units, which is unfortunate. The Plane Striders are very fun. They are squishy, but they are a kind of an eclectic group. They have like stealthy rogue types, they have rangers, they have these undead fighters, they have like a golem turtle that spits fire. They're kind of like remnants of people that were splintered off into every direction, and they were pulled together by one of the characters in the game to form this faction, or at least he started leading them. And then we have the Dremmer, who are let's see, are they one of the new ones? They're a mod race, so we'll go over that in a second. Then we have the Svarts. These are kind of like Nordic engineers. So they like make there's like walking metal like creatures that have guns, basically. It's kind of funny. But they're almost like Nordic, like Vikings, something like that, and they've got like crossbowmen. They're fun. I think I'm going to end up playing them. And then the Undead. These guys were in the first game. They don't heal automatically in friendly territory like the other races do. Undead units don't, but they are very resistant to death magic, which is pretty common type of damage. They produce great mana. They are resistant to arrows, to missile, because they're bones, so there's nothing really for the arrows to stick in. So they've got they've got a lot of really good, like, meat shield troops. And then they can make, like, zombies, which have 1,000,000 health points, and just bog the enemy down. They can make ghosts, which are immune to melee and missile damage, which is really fun. You just gotta watch out for mages. And then the Renaissance mod, added several new factions. So the Dremmer are actually from the first game. They were a DLC enemy faction that are extremely powerful. They are so strong and just disgustingly powerful. It feels like every one of them is a mini boss. And I don't like playing them because they feel too strong, but they like to be in their own type of corrupted, contaminated land, and enemies take damage on it. So they're hard to attack because their cities hit back pretty hard. Their units are tanky. They can do a lot of damage. The ground you're walking on hurts you. It's a rough time. The Infernals are very hard to play, in my opinion. They have great money output, but their units are, I feel like they tend to be kind of squishy. It says one of their cons here is build times tend to be longer. That's true. Some of their units take 3 or 4 turns to make fairly early on, and that can be quite harmful. And yeah, weak to melee damage. You've got a lot of like imps and things that... My cat is sprinting around. Got a lot of imps and things that can throw fireballs but are extremely squishy. And then the Sylvan Order is sort of like wood elves. If you've got sort of like high elves here, the Erethi, you've got kind of wood elves here, and they've got like cool healing, and they can make like bearmen and stuff that regenerate and things like that. So they have some quite fun things. But I think we'll go with the Svarts for this one. And so I usually pick yellow because that's my favorite color. And we'll go with this Chief Justice here. That's weird. I don't want to call him that. We're going to call him... We'll just call him the Chief. There we go. The Chief. And then we'll reset all the perks. And there are a lot of perks now. There didn't used to be this many perks. The Renaissance mod added in a lot of these to give you options. So I think what I'm going to go with is sort of like one of my stock standard builds that I like to use, which is, let's see if I can find it here. Instructor, this gives my units will level up faster passively. I think they normally get 1 or 2 experience per turn passively, but now they'll get 1 more, so they can level up faster and get more perks, more damage, more defenses, that kind of stuff. I like that a lot. And then there is, let's see, if I'm playing as the Svarts, they have good gold and research production, lackluster food production. So maybe what I want to do is, see, I can start with certain like specific resources, like I can have iron for certain in my starting city, or pumpkins, which lets you, depends on the faction, but often turns into mana and food, which is quite nice. So I might go with, where's one for food generation? Maybe I want like a flat food generation, just to make it a little easier at the beginning if I'm going to have trouble with that. 20% extra food. But if I don't make a good amount on a flat, then it's not going to do a whole lot for me, is it? Maybe there isn't a really good flat one. Provisioner, 2 of each. That's pretty nice. For units with status, construct gives regeneration 2. I think we'll go with that with the Svarts, because I'm pretty sure I can make some cool like walking units, like metal units. Spider hatch. Adds an action, have another. Drunken brawler. To who? To me? Interesting. Yeah, we'll go with farmer, just to lighten the load on that a little bit. Here we go. Actually, we'll take that off. We'll get that flat food. I think that'll be nice. And we'll do Dwarven Settlement. I don't want to gamble. Siphon Soul. Maybe we'll do a flat money as well, just to help us out in the early game, which is usually where I struggle the most, because I want to focus on economy too hard, and then I get rolled over by the AI because I didn't build enough units. So this will make my economy better in the beginning, so I can start building more units without having to worry about it. So, alright, so let's start. Okay, so we've spawned in. We've got some very bright colors here. It looks like I've got that sort of autumn world I was talking about. We can see it by going to this tab here. We can see Mist Pine, the autumn world. So this is the shard that the Svarts landed on when the world was shattered. And so now we need to sort of rebuild and get back out there, and I mean, ideally we'd be casting a Unity spell, which is basically like ascend to like a godhood like status, and then we could rebuild the world, but we're not, turn that off for this game. So we're just gonna beat up some other players, beat up some gods, and then call it a win. So yeah, you can see, so here's the worlds panel. So here's this is Ardania backwards, a Nadra. So this is the mirror world of Ardania. So you can get here, and it's like a nearly full-sized regular 4X map, but it'll be a while before we get there. And so here are all the other shards, these little worlds that have spawned in that used to be part of Ardania. And so we will somewhere in here find a portal that takes us to the next shard. And I have no idea what that's going to be. It's going to be one of the, there's a set ones that it would be, and then it's not going to be like a lava world I'll jump to, because it's like way too hard to jump right into that. But that next one could have a portal or something like that. There's like desert worlds, there's Dremor worlds, there's all kinds of stuff. And so there won't be another player on this one. There won't be another player on the one I link to, but the one I link to will have a portal to another player's home, most likely. So what do we have to start here? So it looks like we've got, so let me start with the city. So the city has, it's very simple. If you've played like Civ, the border expansion is not like that. It's a much simpler version. When a city is level 1 through 4, it will have 1 ring. When it hits 5, it'll go out to 2 hexes away from the city in like territory control, and then at level 10 you get to 3, and that's as big as it'll get. And I can build 1 building on each hex. And typically in a game you will not get to the point where you have a building on anywhere near every single hex you could in a city, because your cities just can't grow that big usually unless you've got some tomfoolery going on with your population growth, because it gets slower as they get more and more people. So my city, you can see, so far I have a Prospectors Guild, has an upkeep. This allows me to build Prospectors. Later will let me get Senior Prospectors, which are a stronger version. I can get the Tax Office, I can get Research and Digging Department. And I also have a Market, which is for 4 gold, and that's a prerequisite for this Prospectors Guild. And you can see a lot of things have unique city buildings, so I can't have more than one of these in a city. Most of the time you don't want to, like Prospectors Guild, so you build these units. I don't need more than one of these buildings. But market, I wish I could have a million markets, but I can't. And then a farm. This gives me a little bit of food. And then in the cities, so these are all the things I can build now. And then the building tree it's a little overwhelming. These are the chains. So market lets me go into Prospectors Guild, Tax Office, Bank. Eventually I want to get to the Mint, which gives me plus 100% gold in the city. And then, oh, this keeps going. Yeah, they've got good money production. Aha. So they do have a +4 money building that they can build infinite of. This is the only faction, I believe, that has one of these. Everybody else has to do these +3s. But these guys can get up to this +4 building. You could just build a whole bunch of those. And then they've got Research and Digging Department. So these buildings just do all kinds of different things, and we'll go into that when we get there. Because I've played this game quite a bit, so I usually know kind of what I want to do with each city. Usually, yeah, there's a military tree, farm tree. Yeah, they don't have a real great food option, but it's serviceable. You could just build farms. Harbor. And then starting here, these are special resources. So if we had a Halberdiers Guild resource node, so like this is pigs. So because I have pigs, I could go down and find pigs on... Here's all the buildings that I could possibly build. I won't build probably half of these even in this game. But you can see if you have pigs, I can build pig farm. It gives me +6 food and +10 population growth per turn. And then a lot of factions, so you see here, like this is built on sulfur. Some factions may have one building that they could build something here. So I've got Ritual Circle that lets me build greater fire elementals, and this laboratory which gives me perks I can upgrade my units with. It probably gives them extra elemental damage. I don't know for sure. But some factions will have one, some factions will have 2 or 3 different types of buildings, and then, you know, like this Ritual Circle may not be something that can be built by any other faction. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that, like, the monster faction with goblins and stuff builds something different on pumpkin farms, on pumpkins in the farm. They can also build like a special place that gives them regeneration. And so there's all these different cool resource nodes we can find, and our faction can do different stuff with them than other factions, and it's really quite fun to find those. Just like in any 4X, it's one of the best parts about it is trying to settle your cities in a place where you can gobble up all the resource nodes around you. And there's also special like neutral military buildings, so you can build like knights on donkeys, halberdiers, dwarves, quattles, and minotaurs, which are all have pretty good uses. I don't tend to build them, but I may if I find them. So what I want to start off with is I do want to build another unit right away, because sometimes you get, if I make a mistake or get a little unlucky, I could get a unit killed early, and it just slows down the expansion so much. You can also build a building right away. So what do we want to build right away? We've got good food. Oh yeah, I should probably mention gold is for building troops and upkeep of troops and some buildings. Food is for, if you don't have positive food, your cities will start growing slower, and is also upkeep. And then if you have extra food, half of the food becomes money. So because I'm making +14 food, every turn I'm going to be getting 7 extra gold from the food. So food is, it's okay to be in surplus of food because you get some of it back as money. Not ideal to have like 100, but it's not completely wasted. And then mana is used for spells, and it also has upkeep for certain things. And then research is used for researching. A lot of it is spells, and I'll show you the tree here in a second. And some of it is like empire upgrades. So if we want to look at our spells, we've got, there's wizardry, sorcery, and divine. Wizardry and sorcery, I don't know why they're called that. They seem like kind of the same thing to me, but they do have more, like, sorcery has a lot more of the, like, no it doesn't. I was going to say the flashier stuff, but we've got fireballs and shadow bolts here. So, I don't know. But I have to get 4 spells researched from here before I can start researching this area. Same thing here, 4 to get to the next one. And you get all the way to the end of the tree and you get crazy stuff like Armageddon. You just blow up everything. Summon volcanoes. That's fun stuff. But, and then here we've got healing, land alteration, like making the land cold, raising or lowering the land, turning it into desert, giving experience to units, and then all the way at the end is stuff like reducing casting time by a lot so that I could cast more spells in one turn. Right now I cast usually about 1 spell a turn. So, and then divine spells are that, what I was talking about, that ring of gods, which I can show you. Where is that? I don't think I can look at, I may not be, oh, here it is. So here are the gods. So we've got Chrome, who's kind of like your warrior god. Crypta is the goddess of death. Fervus is the goddess of, I think it's like chaos and wilderness. Lunord is the god of the moon. Grumgog is the god of, I think only goblins worship him, but he's like pestilence, and he's kind of like Orc and Gork from Warhammer. Or Gork and Mork, sorry. Nagrella is the goddess of healing. Doros is the god of like protection, and Helia is the goddess of the sun. So if I start building temples or things like that to say Chrome, then Grumgog will not like me and eventually send an avatar. So you can see I'm right here in the middle, and as I build temples to a god, I would start scooting that way. And then what that does for me, so why would I want to do that if all I'm going to do is make a god mad, right? Well, what I can do is down here in divine spells, I don't have enough favor with any gods to research any of their spells. So what I could do is start heading down one of their paths. And so like in my last game I was doing Helia, so I could get like this special damage spell. And then up here I can make my cities produce more food because they've got the blessing of the sun. And then I can get a drought and make my enemies lose food. And then I can get to desertification and turn large swaths of area into a desert, which changes resource outputs, right? So you can kind of change around what your cities are doing, how efficient they are by altering the land they're on, which is really nice. So, and it's the same thing with all these other gods. I do not remember which ones I can build buildings to, but we can actually check. Because, no, we can't check yet. I think I have to wait till my city levels up once. Let's see if it's in here. Holy site. I can build a holy site. Oh no, that's not a god-specific holy site. Oh, here we go. I can build... Can I build all 8 of these? Doesn't seem right. Ah, okay. These are the same. So I can do Doros, so protection. Chrome, who's like fighting. Fervus, who's like nature and ferocity and chaos. And Grumgog, who I just said only the goblins worship, but I was wrong, is the poison and like pestilence and bugs and stuff like that. So I could try to, you know, kind of focus on what I want my research to be and end up with temples to some of these guys and get really powerful units. I can get these Flycraft of Order, which is apparently a flying machine that's a demolisher. It's got lasers. That sounds pretty cool. Chrome, I can get Exemplar of Strength, which is some sort of huge tanky guy with really good armor and a war cry. He can spin his axes around. Fervus would let me get an exemplar of magic. Same thing, really good armor, fire body, can summon elementals, lava explosion. That sounds fun. And then Grumgog lets me get a Plague Walker, which is a construct that has a Gazer Beam, has Walker Plating, and a Death Cloud. So since we took that perk that gives me regeneration on my units that are machines, I think we'll go with either Grumgog or Doros. So that would be really fun. And I might go with Doros because they've got like some invincibility spells and stuff like that that are really useful for keeping a unit alive, which is really sucks when you lose like a hero or something. So yeah, so that's the introduction to how the game is played and what all the different aspects of the game are. Oh yeah, I didn't show, here's the spell panel. So I don't know any yet, but I can cast, you know, as I research all these spells. You can even find spells sometimes if you're lucky. You know, I'll have all these different things I can do. Buffing units, doing direct damage. Some buffs are temporary, some buffs are permanent. You pay an upkeep. So, yeah, so, well, this will be the end of episode, this will probably be in episode 0, where I just sort of explain what's going on. So, thank you for joining me, and please join me in the next episode, where we will start expanding and see what we can find around us. See you in the next one.